So, I guess I'm part Dutch, I'm part Belgian. I left here 10 years ago, went to Sweden. In fact, I started with games in 1999 when I was 18, got into the Unreal Tournament mod community, started making mods. By age 18, I got hired by Epic Games as my first job. I worked there for a year, then I moved on to Guerrilla Games. I worked for other companies in the meantime as well, Starbreeze, and a couple of smaller ones here in Holland and abroad. At some point, I started my own company. I ran my own indie studio for a while. I ran one of the biggest educations in Sweden for game development for a while as well. And what I do now for Epic Games is I'm Evangelist, so I travel around Europe. I do conferences, schools, meetups, technical visits to companies, anything like that. And I talk about Unreal. Okay, so I have a long technical background as level designer, environment artist, tech artist. But nowadays it morphed more into kind of a blend of everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build what you saw here earlier. That's going to be tight, so this is going to go on full speed, okay? So enjoy. Before we go there, I just want to bring up a couple of general points of Unreal to make sure everyone is is aware of what we're doing. And before I even do that, who of you has been using Unreal? Who of you uses Unreal frequently, like once a week or something like that? Okay. Who of you uses Unity frequently, like once a week or similar setup? Okay. More questions, sorry. Who of you are students? Okay, that's the great majority, okay. Okay. Good. So we started with the Unreal Engine in about 1995. That's about where we started development. So the engine is now, what is it, 22 years old, 23 almost. So we're getting very old. I think we're the oldest publicly available game engine, and the one has been available most consistently over the past 2 decades. We are in the 4th generation, which means we've done 3 entire rewrites after the first one. And this one was released for the public in 2014, so now we're about 3 years in with Unreal Engine 4. Very quickly, I'm going to really crash through most of these things. What makes us unique is, or not really unique, but what I really like about the Unreal Engine myself is that everyone has the exact same tools. So it doesn't matter if you're a very big company or you're a school or a student or a hobbyist or whatever you're doing, you get the exact same tools. There are no different versions. There are no there's no academical version. There's no indie version with less tools or weird splash screens or other stuff. It's the exact same thing for everyone, whether you're the biggest studio in the world or one person as a hobbyist. Okay? This is what you're going to see come back a lot today, because I'm going to actually build something which is going to require me to use all the different tools, not all of them, but many of them. All the sub-editors are included. We have a different approach to Unity, and neither is better or worse, but it's different. I personally prefer this approach. So we don't rely on a plugin-based system. We have plugins, you can use them, but there's less need for them. So the material editor, for example, is their standard. All of the different sub-editors are their standard. They're done by us, the same people. They're documented. They work on every platform. They work together because they're done by the same people, and so on and so on. And you will see how easy it is going to be for me to build something quickly because everything is already there and everything is made for each other. Runs on everything, so that's easy. Pictures, logos, runs on everything. The source code is available, everything, even the editor. I say this every year, but you can make the editor purple. You can then send the purple change back to us and ask us to make it permanent, and we will not do that, but you could do it. Okay? What we will do is add, if you bug fix something, we will add that, or similar, improvements. But everything is there. You can't get stuck. You can get stuck because it's too complicated or it's too big or something like that, but you can't truly get stuck because there is a bug in the engine, because the whole engine is available. It's entirely free to use, especially in education. There's not even license management. You can literally just copy the files from the engine from one computer to the next. It doesn't need accounts, it doesn't need license management or whatever, it just needs the files copied to another computer. It's very straightforward. For games, you have a 5% royalty rate. That's the only price there is, and it's free for most non-game usage. So it's very straightforward. Okay, and we also gave away, or are giving away, $5 million, because why not? Okay, that's ongoing. You can apply to that. You're not going to get $5 million, you get a lot less, but it's $5 million in total, and then we give it away to whatever cool Unreal project we see, and you can apply on our website. And when you get the money, you get the money. We don't need it back. You don't have to pay it back. You don't have to stick to rules. You can literally take the money and then buy a plane ticket to the Bahamas and sit there for a month or 2 or 3. Okay? Well, you're probably not going to like that, but technically you could. Anyway, so to recap and to wrap this up and move on to building something, in general, we are after the high end. We are after the best tools, the best performance, and the best graphics. In short, what we want is quality. That's it. We want quality. And there's lots of stuff I can show, but I'm just going to show this one to pick one. I'm not sure if you're going to hear the sound. It's not that important either to hear the music. I have the sound quite low. But this is what we had in Star Wars Rogue One. It's the robot. So in the actual movie that got shown in the theaters, the robot is rendered in Unreal. And it's just a few seconds. So it doesn't have a huge impact on the movie. I mean, it's just a few seconds. But the fact that you've got companies like that, and IPs like that, movies like that, experimenting with Unreal, and trying that out, and embedding that, and be happy enough with it to actually release the movie with it, that's a huge step. Okay? So that's where we're moving towards. We're moving towards more and more towards the film industry, towards other industries. The car industry is really using Unreal a lot because of the rendering quality, because of the way we're extending the engine. And that's also true for games. So if you go at any one point to the top 20 or so on Steam, or the top 20 or so on PlayStation or Xbox, at least 50% of those games are usually Unreal, at the very minimum, usually about 75% or even more. Okay? You want the best quality, the highest performance, that's it. That's it. Good. Anyway, let's do this. And I'm going to run out of time on this, so I will skip things left and right. I also don't like slides, so I'm going to forget about my slides. Okay? And I might speed up, and I might decide to suddenly step over something. Okay? So this will be very dynamic. But we're going to start with the most basic stuff first, which is building up the world. So we'll start there. And I want to do all of these steps in order to give you a bit of an idea of what it's like to build something in Unreal, because you're not going to remember what I do. This is too much. And this has obviously been prepared, and I know what I'm doing. So it's going to be too much, but you're going to get a rough idea of like, okay, so this is how everything ties together. And that's the setup. So I've got a new project here. I have a new level. I did this new empty level, so a completely empty level. I'm going to build a world. I have a couple of models. There's quite a lot of already imported, obviously. One of them is the floor, which is a beautiful cube. So I have a cube, okay? A model of a cube. I drag the cube in. I have the cube in the world. Okay, I reset this to 0, 0, 0, because I need to make sure everything lines up. The whole thing that I prepared has been set for a specific set of coordinates. So I add that, then I add the sidewalk, same thing, I drag it in. It's a model of a bunch of sidewalks. And then I'm going to add a building. And I add the distant buildings. I'm actually abusing the blueprint system for this. So there's not much blueprint in this presentation, but blueprint is actually super cool. This is blueprint. It's visual scripting, and major parts of the engine and the editor workflow are based on blueprint. In this case, I don't have any visual scripting. There's nothing here, but I'm just abusing it to place these city buildings. See, the different pieces. It's kind of like a prefab. It's not really meant to be used as just for placing meshes, but it'll work too. So now I got this. Let's add a sky to it. I forgot where that is. Let me search for the sky. A sky in Unreal tends to be just a giant sphere, or half a sphere. And then you place sky on that. So now you have that. Cool. And then there's a sun somewhere, so I'm going to rotate it. So the sun is roughly there, is about what I think I need. And I'll turn off the light, so we do it without light. So now I have that. Now I could continue on placing things. I think you get the idea, right? You click a mesh in the content browser, you drag it up, and it appears. It goes a little bit slow, so I'm going to go much more high-tech here. I have Notepad. So open Notepad, Control-A, Control-C, go to Unreal, Control-V, cool, building. Let's do it again, because that will go faster. I take that, I take this, and paste, details, cool. So everything in Unreal is actually text. If you copy-paste it to the Notepad, it becomes text. And you can actually be in a chat program together and just copy-paste it to each other. The other person copies it back, pastes it back, and you've got the actual same stuff in your editor. Okay? So that's what I did. I saved some text files to speed up the presentation, but you can do this in actual production as well, even if it's very low tech. And here's the roads and some other stuff. So now I have this. Cool. More issues. One of them being the ground is a little bit boring, perhaps, and not entirely realistic. So I have a material for that, which is partially unfinished. So I'm going to copy the material, and then I'm going to finish it. So I have that one, which is named unfinished, so that's probably the one. So I copy that there, and then turn off the search filter. I dragged it on top, and I have assigned it. But it's not finished still. And you see what we kind of did here. It's just some random pattern between the leaves and the moss, and it goes like that, which is okay. I mean, it's not perfect. It obviously tiles massively, but ignore that. But what I do want to demonstrate is that you can paint on it. I want to paint a piece of road on it, or gravel, or something like that. And I'm going to do that by importing the best texture ever, which is that one. So I'm imported a texture which is really detailed white texture. Okay? This took really long to make, about 6 days. So I have the material. This is the material I just assigned. This is the material editor. You can see everything is built in, everything is readily available. You can see here what it does. It takes the world position, so I actually planar map the UV coordinates in Unreal. I don't use the UV coordinates of the box that came from the 3D modeling program. I scaled that down a few times because the number is too big. And then I use this cloud texture that's the switch you see between leaves and moss. So I use that, I change the numbers around a bit more, I clamp it, and then eventually we switch between the two textures. Likewise for the two normal maps, and that goes to base color and normal, that's it. What I want to do now is I want to add the white texture I just made. I can do it like that. I could have also just dragged it, by the way. So do that. And then I want to take 2 more textures. So I'm going to copy this one. And I'm going to set it to, if I can remember the name, I think it's gravel or something. Gravel that, I think. Or not, sorry. Let me actually just find where this one is located. So I want that there. Okay. Gravel. And I want to blend that based on where this one is going to be painted. So I'm going to add a linear interpolate here that's based on red, green, or blue, it doesn't matter, it's a white texture anyway, of this one. Where it's black, so where it's A, it's going to become gravel. And where it's B, it's going to become what was already there. And then that thing goes to base color. This needs the same line as the other ones have for the UV projection. So I take that. And this one specifically has to be on a different set of UV coordinates. So I add a texture coordinate behind it, and I say it's coordinate index 1. That's it. I approve that, or even save it. Let's save it. And it will do absolutely nothing. So that's great. Okay, because the texture is white. That's as expected. But what I'm going to do now with that white texture is paint on that white texture in the viewport. So I switch to the painting tab here. I can paint on textures. And this automatically shows you the textures that were found within the material that you've got. And this shows you my white paint texture. And it says UV channel. That has to match the one I typed in the other one. I paint, and if I paint with black, I get a pad. Cool. See? Now, I'm not going to finish this. This takes too much time. But you get the idea. You paint. Okay? And then you say, yes, approve. You see what happened here on the black texture. Somewhere here, you get a very tiny bit of black. That's what I painted. This is not the normal way of doing landscapes. You actually have a built-in landscape system you would use for actual proper landscapes, which works entirely different, but it's just a quick thing you can do, and I'm going to use something similar for the road in a second. Anyway, we have this. It's still rather boring, so I'm going to go to foliage, and I will go to, where is it? Over here, I got a bunch of trees and grass models. It says drag foliage here. Okay, so I'm dragging it there. I did that, cool. Then I paint, and cool, I have trees. That was easy. That goes fast and easy. I'm going to paint with a bit of a bigger brush. I'm going to paint a little bit on the edges here. And it's probably going to go wrong here and there. I'll fix that. I'll do the same there. Something like that. I'm going to reduce the paint in the density and say I use a bigger brush. And then I'm going to paint with a lower density in the distance. So it still feels there is something there. It's just not as much, for the sake of performance. And if it's a cinematic, you can cheat quite a lot, because no one can, for example, it's completely empty on this side. No one will see that. So I'll do it like this. And I'm doing it very rough. You're supposed to do a little bit better than what I'm doing it. Obviously, if this is real production, but for the sake of speeding this up, I'm going to paint a little bit more here. And you can even select these things individually. So you can actually see if there is grass growing through the sidewalk, I can still select them and move them one by one. This is instance rendered, so all of them will render at the same time. It's very optimized. So you can create dense forests, and it doesn't really have any impact on performance to an extent. So let me just delete a few of these trees, and then we move on. Because the character is going to be walking here, where you see this node actor. There's going to be a character there. That's more or less okay. Now, it's a little bit dark, slightly, because there's no lighting. So I'm going to do the lighting very quickly as well. Normally, you would do it like so. I will go to lights here, and I add a directional light, for example. Right, and you can place that, and you can rotate that, and make it match up with the sun. And obviously, you get light and shadows, and you can add a skylight, which would do that. And a skylight actually takes a picture of the entire sky. So the entire sky that surrounds the level gets captured in the cube map, and the cube map gets projected onto the level. So if the sky would be very orange on one side and very blue on the other side, you would get orange ambient lighting hitting the world from this side, and blue ambient lighting hitting the world from that side. It gives the atmospheric light that comes down from all directions, because the atmosphere above us is scattering the light. And there's a lot of properties in here. I don't have time to set them up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to replace the two I just added here with the exact same thing, but with predefined properties, okay? So I delete it, I take a blueprint again, and in this blueprint here, you can see that, again, there's no scripting, but I use it to have a skylight, the light component. I also have fog in there with predefined settings. So if I just drag that in, I immediately get this. And if I then drag post-processing in, I get the same, it's just slightly more contrasted. So now after, I can do this in about 1 minute, if I do this on speed without talking, I've built this, and obviously it's been prepared, but in terms of how fast it goes to get pretty stuff and get results going, it goes very fast. Okay. Okay, good. We even have lens flares, super important, as you can see. We need the characters, because this is going to be a cinematic between two robots, so I need the characters, and the characters are going to have to be on the exact right position. Actually, sorry, before I go there, I just noticed, the road is, as you can see, very shiny. It's a little bit too unrealistically shiny, I'd say, right? And it is very shiny, and also there's mistakes in here, by the way. I'm not sure if you can see that. But there's a triangle running here, for example, and there's a triangle running there. So both the sidewalks and the road are wrong. So what I will do now is go back to the painting tab here, and instead of painting textures, I'm going to paint vertex colors. And in fact, I can show the vertex colors, because this is how the vertex colors look on the road. They're white, and this is on the sidewalk, and you can see here, if you see it on the projector, there are triangles running in there that shouldn't be there. So if I simply fill the whole thing with some kind of yellowish, I'm not doing this scientifically correct, but some kind of yellowish color that matches what we had prepared there, and we add that, the triangles are gone. On the road, this is going to be more visible. Let me select all the pieces of road. Actually, that one as well. And let's just paint this then. See, now it's no longer shiny, but you get some water pools in it. In fact, if I paint again, not with yellow, but with white, and I start painting with white, I can paint water pools on it. Okay? And it all goes very fast. And again, obviously, I prepared my content. But that's exactly the point. If you prepare it a little bit, then you can go up on full speed in production. It will go very fast to keep on making new content because of this. What happened here with the pools is that in the material, this is the material of the road, we've got this, and this is at some place using the vertex colors in order to blend in pools where you paint, mixed with probably a noisy texture to determine how the water is being painted on top of it. Once you've made the material, it's very easy to just keep on replicating it. Cool, now I have that. So, the characters. The two robots have to be precisely located for the sake of the cutscene. So somewhere in here we have that node actor we saw briefly before, which is that one. That's going to be the main character, which is going to be this one in turn, if you can find it back. Oh yeah, this is the one with physics. But I can show it because it doesn't work, so it's going to be funny for you. This is the robot from Robo Recall, or VR game. This is normally the editor we use to create ragdolls. This one has not been set up correctly, so if I press simulate, it will do that. Okay? Yeah. Anyway, So that's going to be the model we use here. In fact, that's the non-ragdoll version. So I'm going to replace this with the robot. So I have a robot. And I'm going to do the same for, I think it's this one. This is the big robot, the enemy, which is going to be this thing. It's a more scary thing. I don't know. It's going to fly and shoot at you. So, OK. I have to do a couple of small additional steps. I need to add a few effects here as well before we can set up the cutscene. One of them is the explosion that happens when you kill the robots, which is that one. You can see this is our built-in particle editor. This is going to be the big explosion you get. I can restart it. So big boom. It works like this. You get a rough idea for how the particle editor works. We've had this particle editor since 2006 already, as with many tools. So you know we're already way past the point of, yeah, let's have a material editor. We've had a material editor since 2006. We've had a cinematic editor since 2006. We had a particle editor since 2006. We've already rewritten our cinematic tool and introduced a new one. We are now introducing a new particle editor soon, which is going to be node-based. So you can create particles with nodes as well, visual scripting for particles, because this is no longer good enough. Every Unreal Engine game you've seen since 2006 has used this, and this is no longer good enough. So we're going to go to the next step with this. Anyway, explosion. So let's say this will become explosion. Okay. Now I'm supposed to turn it off by default, but I'll leave it on so it explodes once at the beginning. Or actually, let me just turn it off. There's a property in here that says auto-activate, so let's not do that. Then this is going to be a smaller explosion, so I'll do that. And this is also going to be a smaller explosion. And again, I'll turn both of these off by default. So there. That's a sewer. I'll forget about that for a second. Did I forget something? I think I'm about there. Later on, I need to bring in a missile, but I'll do that in a second. This one needs a gun tow. He's going to be holding a gun. And the gun is going to be this revolver thing here. Gun. OK. Gun. Cool. Drag gun in there. Now, it needs to hold it. And in order to hold it, I'm going to attach it. But in order to attach it, I need a bone. And in order to have the bone, I actually also need a socket. So if I look at the mesh itself, the character that we have here, you actually see actually holds a gun here. This gun is just preview. It doesn't really exist. It's just for previewing. If you look at the skeleton, you see this is the skeleton that makes up the character. In here, we have a grab socket. So you can create sockets on the bones. These bold text things, these are bones. The non-bold text, those are sockets. I can right-click a bone and create a socket on it. So create a virtual remember this position thing and attach something to it, socket. So I need grab socket L. I'm going to copy-paste the name here. So I copy the name. I go back to the viewport, and I will attach this to mainbot. I automatically get the list of the sockets and I believe also the bones. And I'm going to look for grab socket L here, and that automatically places the gun in the hand, as you can see. So it's attached. And if the animation would play, the gun would move along. Now, for some weird reason, I also decided that it would be very important to have a flag that says pang. But then I learned that in English, you're supposed to say bang and not pang. So I had to change it to bang. So that thing is going to be attached to the gun as well. That's what you're going to be shooting with. It's inverted if you look at it from the backside. Ignore that. I'm going to make this movable. And likewise, so I'm going to attach that to the gun. Sorry, that was the wrong one. In the same way. I ran out of resolution. Revolver. That, and that gives me the pang socket, and it's automatically there. See, so now it comes out. As you can see. Cool. I don't know why, but we did that. Then we're ready, I believe. Let me double check with my own slides, because this is how I forget my slides. Did we do that? Yeah, we did that, except the detail on the road, which I'll add in a second. And we did that, except those two, but that's intentional. And we did that. And we did that, except the rocket, but that's intentional as well for a while. So we can move on. So the one thing I did not mention is there is a couple of additional street furniture I'd like to add, a couple more details on the road. And I could place them by hand or copy-paste them in with Notepad, but I can also, again, use Blueprint for that. So Blueprint works for everything. It also works for editor scripting and stuff like that. This is what I place, lantern and bench placer. This is, you see, for some reason also, since 1995, we've had dinosaur heads as icons. Okay? So there's always dinosaur heads everywhere. We used to have rotten apples too. So everything was either a dinosaur or a rotten apple. This has a property to assign a model to it. So I'm going to assign, I think it's called street light or something like that, street light to it, a model of a street light, as you can see, and then that's in the wrong direction, so we rotate that. And what I want to do is I want to fill the street with lights, and I don't want to place them manually. So I'm just going to enter, say, 10 here, and now I have 10 of them, and say 800 in distance. It's a simple little script that does that for me. I can show you how it works. This is it. That's all the scripting I've done. Right? We take the number of things we want to have, we clamp it to make sure people don't enter 1 million and ruin the system. Then we loop this by the same number of things you've entered. So if you say 20, it will loop 20 times. And every time it loops, it adds a model, a static mesh component to it, similar to Unity in the sense you add a component and the component holds the model. That component gets added at this particular location. That's a variable for a vector. And we also set the model. We update the model within the component. And then this variable for the position, the vector, that gets updated every time we've looped it around. And we do the current position plus the distance. So the number increases step by step. That's it. That's all the scripting we had. And technically, I can duplicate it again and replace it with bus stops because these people need a lot of buses. So they have a lot of buses. Okay. Good. So the cinematic itself. New level sequence. I'll just take the default name. And I'm going to set this up really rough because it does take time to do all the animations. I mean, this takes a lot of time. So what you're going to see now is do it really, really rough and crappy. And then I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to bring in the ready-made one, which is done in the exact same way as explained, except a lot more time was spent on actually doing this stuff. So let's start with this guy. We can add it to the cinematic tool. So if I have it selected, it says actor to sequence, add main bot. So now I've got it in here. Then the easiest thing I can probably do is to just make it move, right? Before I go, I'm going to extend the length of the animation. So just make the whole thing longer. And then I go to transform. And we add a key. So this little button here adds a key. It adds a position. It remembers the current position. So yes, remember the current position in the beginning of the animation where he actually is right now. And then at some point further into the time, and I don't know how long this is, we're going to play it and maybe it's too fast. I place the time there, then I move the thing to where it should be going, say somewhere there, and then we press the key again. And you see you get this line in between. And you get the best animation ever. Yeah. And we can make it even more cool if you actually make him walk and not slide. So there's an animation thing here. I can add an animation to it. And I'm going to take sprint forward. The animations I'm using are actually game animations from the actual game itself. They're not meant for a cinematic. So they're all looping animations. So I'm going to have to do some hacking around and messing around to make this more suitable. And this is going to look terrible. You see, I can actually drag out the animation I had. I'm not sure if it's visible for you on the projector, but it's these very small lines here. Every time that line happens, that's the loop. So it just loops itself. And you can see what happened now if I play this. And again, this will look terrible because he's going to walk much faster than he actually moves. But yeah, he's playing animation. Okay. Now, once he gets to the end, to the position there, what I want him to do is I want him to turn, look into the street, and then eventually he needs to be like, where's the big enemy? So he needs to look around, and then he needs to be, oh, there he is. And then he needs to run towards the enemy, which is going to be here. And then he needs to dodge a couple of rockets and eventually shoot the big boss. The boss falls down, explodes, and then the small bot is supposed to run away again in slow motion while the whole thing explodes. Okay. So I'm going to move to the big boss in a second. I just want to show you the blending of the animation. So imagine that the next step here would be that we need this thing to, say, go there and then turn a bit or so. Right, so we just continue, and again, it's not entirely realistic here. But you add a second animation, which is sprint stop. So sprint forward stop, so just slowing down animation after a sprint. You can blend these together. See, you can just drag them to overlap, and if you drag here, I can fade that one out and fade this one in. And this is all going to be difficult to see, but you see now he actually starts to stop. See? So that's how you put the whole thing together. I compose it. Now, the big robot is entirely different. We took a different approach there. So I'm going to add that one as well. And likewise, here I have animations. I'm going to add an animation to it, and I add intro tunnel, which is one gigantic long animation. This is not long enough. Right, so it's literally one long animation that plays everything in one go. So obviously, you can also set this up in 3D Studio Max or Maya or whatever you use, or Blender or something. And you might hear sounds. I'll turn it off, because there's sounds embedded in the animation. You can set up the animations in the other tools as well, and then just import them, right? And that's what we've done here. And then also, what I haven't shown you is a camera. So you can easily make a camera. I can press this button. Let's put the time in the beginning. And press the button, and we have camera. It automatically adds a camera cut track and the actual camera itself. And then in order to animate that, it's very easy. I just go to transform. I add a key. I fly somewhere. I look at something. Sorry, I had to move the time. I fly somewhere. I look at something, and I press the key again. Sorry, it did not do that correctly, it seems. Come on. Doesn't seem to want to do that. Oh, sorry. Should do. I broke it. Let's open it again, see what happens. But then now I have keys, so yeah, I don't know what happens. The keys didn't show up. The keys were there. Let's do this again. Let's delete that and make sure this is fine. Fly somewhere, add a key. And see, now I have a basic camera animation. So you basically put the time somewhere, fly somewhere else, look at the robot, add a key somewhere, and you start having this whole animation with the camera moving around. You can also import the cameras from Maya or 3D Studio Max, so all of that works as well. I can easily just do this. Look, I can, actually, let me delete this. I can right-click, I can do import, I can take the FBX file, which is just our standard format, import that, it takes about 20 seconds, and we'll have the camera show up soon with all the entire animation there. Now, once that's there, in order for the sake of time, I'm going to delete what I just did, and I'm just going to bring in some ready-made ones, or in fact, I'm going to load up the existing one as well directly after that to speed this up a bit and show you a little bit of the more advanced things. In fact, let's do it right away to speed it up. So normally, the problem with cutscenes, especially if you get very large cinematics, right, you wouldn't want the entire cinematic to be in this file, because the file I have selected is the cinematic. If you have a team of people, it would get difficult. You can't all work on the same file. So we have 3 different ways of solving that. We've got shots, takes, and sequences, subsequences. I'm going to show you subsequences. They all work in kind of the same idea. If I add a subsequence track to it, that subsequence track, I'm in fact even going to delete what I just did, the 2 bots, allows me to add an existing sequence to it. So I can take another sequence and merge it with this one. So I can take, for example, the main bot, which we're getting there. If I double-click that, you see everything I set up in the past. You see these are all the animations with blending together and so on. And you can see they're connected there. In fact, I can take a second one. I can take all the audio. See, now I have audio and the main bot. In audio, you see all the music and sounds that I had set up. These are different files, so the team members, so you can have one person in the team work on this file, one person in the team work on this file, and eventually it all gets merged together in one cinematic. Okay. And that's what we've done in the real level as well, similar to that at least. So I'll switch to the finished level, but it looks exactly the same as this one, see? And in here, I'm going to take the finished animation, which again was done in the same way as what you've just seen. So here's the finished one in one go. It's all the different things in here. So yeah, it takes a bit of time to set this up, but it's all the same kind of tracks, the same kind of workflow. And what I see what we can focus on, there's a couple of cool things here. One of them is the physics of the police car. I definitely want to try to show that. And the robots in the distance are cool, I think. You see the black planes, those will be robots in a second. But let's start with the police car. So what you can do in Sequencer as well is record whatever happens in-game. So imagine I do like this. I take these police cars, and this is going to behave weirdly, right? So this is going to go wrong. Ignore that. The point is, on a technical level, what I'm going to do. I've enabled physics on the 3 police cars. Now I'm going to raise them up a little bit into the air. And when I play this, they move a bit because I just gave them physics, and they behave weirdly because their collisions are intersecting, and ignore all of that. But the point is, when I now run an event that I made called bake, they get physics again, they get pushed. So every time I run this event, they get pushed. See, they get physics. There is a force applied to them. That force is applied in a simple blueprint script here, where we have event bake, add a radial force to the 3 police cars, and add that force with radius 5,000, force 200,000 at this location. That's it. But what we want to do now is imagine that in the cutscene you want an explosion to take place and the police cars are supposed to fly away from the explosion. If you do that in a cinematic, then the physics will get, they're going to be different every time. And that wouldn't be very good, right? So we're going to bake the physics into an animation. We have this tool here, it's a sequencer recorder. And I can add 3 entries there for my 3 police cars, and I can say the first one is the one I had, so that's you, and this is you, and the third one is that one. And then I can play the game again, ignore the initial bump. I can press record there, and as it's counting down, I'm ready to run the event that applies a force to them again. So I do this. See, it's slightly strange, I guess. We wait until the car stabilized a bit, which is about now. We stop it, and we stop the game as well. We close that, and we open the thing it made for me. So it created a new sequence for me with the 3 police cars in it, with all the positions in it, see? And if I run this, you're going to see a duplicate car. Ignore the fact that it's a duplicate car for a second. But you see the whole thing is now an animation. And I can go really far with this. I could imagine you got a game with zombies, you get like 100 zombies, and you want to make a cinematic with an army of zombies running towards the camera or something. You don't want to animate 100 zombies, I guess, right? So what you can do is spawn 100 zombies with AI, just as regular enemies, and then capture them into a sequence. It captures the movement of all those 100 zombies, converts it into a regular animation, and then you can use that animation within the bigger cinematic. Or you can, for example, play a race game and record yourself racing, and then race against yourself, because you basically have a ghost car driving alongside you then. And that's what we've done in this level as well. Now, in the about 5 to 10 minutes I have left, I'll reload this to undo what I just did. And I want to talk a little bit about the frames in the back here, these big planes. Because what we have here is this. So, and in fact, while this is active, you can see what I did here now. Sorry, crappy. If you go up close, it's bad. So my issue was, my challenge was, I wanted to have an army of robots in the distance, but that's very performance heavy. So how can I make a big giant swarm of robots flying around and not have it take too much performance? This is not necessarily the best way. There are different ways of doing it. It might have been better with a flipbook and on a particle and so on. But just for the sake of demonstration, this is a video. So I made a blueprint, and it shows you how easy it is to do this. This literally took 10 minutes to do. I made a blueprint of a single robot just playing an animation, just doing this. That's all it does. Then I made a second blueprint that gives me a box in which these things are spawned. So all it does, it takes the one you just saw, and it makes a box, which is the box you're looking at, with the big frame, and then it randomly fills that box with robots. Okay, so now you have a lot of floating robots. Then I placed the green model behind it, and then I captured that in Sequencer. Because in Sequencer, you can easily export things as well. You can do, just take a random one here and show you. I can do this, render movie, and it will actually render it out to a set of images, or I think it's MP4 or something by default, or AVI or something like that, right? So I did that. Then I ended up with a video. So this is an actual video. If I can find back where I put it, which I'm not sure where I put it. It's an actual video somewhere here on the disk. I think that one. See, it's just an MP4. That got loaded into Unreal, and then I added that into the material itself. So in the material, this is now a video. And then I did the material setup to green screen away the whatever is green, right? And now I've got robots. So I'll show you again. If I open that one, it has to play. It only plays if you specifically tell it to play. So So this is one of the things I've done there as well. You can also easily extend this, by the way. So you can script it while it runs. So one of the things I prepared, you can see it's very small little scripts here. One of them is called change. If I would run the event change, I will change the binding on the cinematic. So this is the cinematic. It's a reference to the cinematic. And on the cinematic, a binding gets changed. It's going to change this particular binding. It's going to change the main bot binding. So these are all the things that exist in the cinematic. And it's going to replace that with this particular object, which is in the level. It's a reference to an object in the level. It's a mailbox. Okay? So I can easily change, for example, in a practical scenario without mailboxes, say you have a game where there's 6 different playable characters. You don't know which character would be entering the cutscene, right? So you can script it so it gets replaced as it happens. And I will demonstrate this with the actual mailbox. And after that, I'll have time for a few questions. See if I have everything set. I think so. See if we're going to get sound from the game itself. Okay, I'm not sure what the volume will be. You might get a heart attack, okay? So be prepared. So I'm going to play the cinematic as I had it made entirely until the very end. And when the big explosion happens, I'm going to replace it with a mailbox. So you have a very epic shot of a mailbox running away from an explosion. And there's some ambient sounds. I can force the movie to start, which I think was start MOV. Yeah, sound is okay, I think. Good. Very briefly first, one thing I forgot to mention. You saw the zoom-in effect, which was not the most pretty, but I just had to have something to demonstrate the thing, where it got reds and you got these lines across it and like it zoomed in. All of that was done with a post-process blendable, so I actually blended the material with the post-processing system. And that in turn, then I used the material setup to distort it, and it all got rather advanced and very strange. And it's all hard to explain within a minute, but this is the material that gets blended with the screen. This is the actual output of the screen. Intercepted by the material editor and modified using the regular material editor and then injected back into the screen, which got really weird because I made like a distortion function using like so, which creates some kind of normal mapped shape that looks like that, where the edges are kind of, you can see a little bit on the edges. That gives you the fisheye effect, distorts the screen, and then we add red lines on top of it, and I made my own distance fog and all that. All of this took literally minutes to do. Obviously, again, I know what I'm doing. I know how to make these setups. But the fact you can so easily customize the rendering, so easy make things, make new effects, and so on and so on. That's really the power of Unreal. The speed, the quality, the built-in tools, and the difference towards Unity where they have a more plug-in-based approach. They allow you to create your own pipeline, your own workflow. With us, you're a little bit more locked down. You have to follow our approach. But if you follow our approach, it goes very, very fast. So, I mean, it's a difference. It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just really different approach. Good.